Today on the final bar, we're going to hear from my guest, Grayson Roze. Grayson is the Vice President of Operations here at StockCharts.com, sharing with us the arrival of fundamental data on the StockCharts platform, featuring the new symbol summary page. We're also going to have a segment, Shifting Stocks, also our market recap, where we relive today's activity, a nice up move led by technology stocks at or near new highs. What does this all mean relative to the long-term trends, particularly with market breadth? Join me today, ladies and gentlemen, this is the Final Bar. Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of The Final Bar. Thanks for joining us every weekday after the close to look at the movements in the market, connect it to the long-term trends, have a good proper technical perspective to everything that we're seeing and hearing. So today we have plenty of upside. I feel like every time the market realizes things could go down, it remembers the next day that things can also go right back up. And we had this follow through led by technology, but also things like real estate. So I think a lot of opportunities, a lot of movements to break down as we think about today's trading. In a segment a little later called Shifting Stocks, we're going to look in particular at which names are on the move. Some of them I think that are some compelling setups here. Also joined later today by Grayson Roze, who's our Vice President of Operations. He's going to share with you the addition of fundamental data onto the StockCharts platform featured in our symbol summary page, which is a new function that's received really good reviews from a lot of the StockCharts users. So he's going to walk through what it is, how to use it, and how you should include it as part of your process of using the StockCharts platform. Coming up here in the next couple weeks, we have some great content on the Final Bar, but also on StockCharts TV. So later this week, we have Jim Smith. Jim is a GAN analyst I've known for a number of years based down in Texas. We also have Chris Brecher from Brecher Trading. On this Thursday the 13th, we're going to feature our first YouTube live Q&A. So if you've not checked out our YouTube channel, go to it now if you would. Make sure you hit subscribe, hit the little notification, and then when we come on live to talk about charts and answer your questions, you'll get a pop-up right on your phone, on the website, and you'll be able to interact with us there. Next week, on February 19th, Leslie Juflas, who's a fellow Seattleite from Trading Live Online, is going to join us. And then on February 20th, Sam Burns, who's the founder of Mill Street Research in the Boston area. So some really good strategist experts in the coming weeks. I think you're really going to enjoy what they have to say. And obviously, there's plenty of movements to try to break down from all of our perspectives, I think. Let's move right into the market recap. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, we've had just a lot of upside here. And we've talked a lot about the last 30 to 60 minutes of the day and how that represents a lot of institutional trading, ETFs that have to rebalance. All of that happens at the end of the day. And you can just see this parabolic rise that happened in stocks. And again, our goal is not necessarily to think about the reasons as to what's happening, what's causing people to move it. It's to focus on the supply and demand, right? The fear and the greed, the motivation of buying and selling that's causing these price patterns to emerge. That's what we're trying to capture. So the S&P 500 up about 0.75%, 0.73% here at the close, followed by mid caps up just over 0.5%, then followed by small caps up over 0.33%. So we have this similar challenge that we've had recently, which is stocks overall doing very well, but it's the big mega cap and especially mega cap technology that's definitely driving it. That's not necessarily a problem because as we can see from a chart of the S&P 500, the market can go up for quite a long time with that being the motivator, with that being the catalyst, right? But again, all else being equal, you'd love to see broader participation. That's why we like to look at market breadth more often than not and not to steal the thunder of the 3 and 3 too much, but I know at least one or two of them is going to be related to breadth today because I think that's where you're seeing some potential, non-confirmation of what we're seeing with stocks. On the daily chart of the S&P, you can see the higher highs in price. This is from mid-January here on the left, and then I'm seeing the highs from the last couple days. New closing high, new intraday high on the S&P today, so certainly finishing in a position of strength. That is absolutely true. The challenge we have right now is a potential non-confirmation, or what we call a bearish divergence, with higher highs in price, lower peaks in the RSI. The challenge with that is that can resolve higher. So if you look at the chart of gold, you had a number of bearish divergences that actually resolve to the upside. So you always want to be watching when you see this. Do we continue on to new highs? Does the RSI actually resolve higher? Does it stop that pattern of lower peaks? And if so, then it tells you the negative momentum is alleviated, and there's certainly potential for further upside. Let's go to the member dashboard and break down what we're seeing. So as I mentioned, stocks finishing in a position of strength. The S&P 100, the largest companies, up even more than anything else. Looking at the sectors here in the upper right, we have technology leading the way, up 1 1/3%, just above that. Real estate was number 2. And one of the people we interviewed over the weekend at the Money Show down in Orlando was a REIT expert. We talked a lot about the real estate sector. It's something that people love to just not think about because it's sort of off of the mental list. It broke off as its own sector a couple years ago off of the financial sector. Now it's its own one of the 11 sectors, and the challenge is it pays a great dividend. The chart has been pretty good. The challenge is the relative performance, but overall today it's certainly leading the way to the upside up with technology. Then we have consumer discretionary number 3, and then a bit of a fall off down to sort of the market performers, underperformers. At the bottom we have energy and we have materials, and again, not to give you a recommendation on energy, but in general, I don't like to be in places where you see a consistent pattern of lower highs and lower lows, and by any stretch, I think that's what the XLE is sort of telling you, right? It's that down and to the right pattern. We're going to come back to some individual stocks later when we have our segment on shifting stocks, so I don't want to talk too much about that, but I did want to point out, looking at global ETFs, you had China up pretty big today. So the A-shares ETF, that's ticker KBA, up the most, almost 2%, and a lot of the other Asian ETFs up pretty well in support of that. On the downside, you're going to have things that are more commodity, especially oil-related, Brazil, Russia, and then frontier markets as well. In terms of group themes, industry themes, I think it's worth noting that a couple of the materials groups actually did the best today. Now, a lot of these are rebounding off of some really low levels. So just as a reminder, when you see something like paper stocks up a lot today, you think, well, that's great news. If you look at the chart, though, remember, one day's trading is part of a larger mosaic, a larger picture, and that's the trend that you want to pay a little more attention to. So something like, paper rallying today, it's more of a counter trend move, sort of popping up within the context of a downtrend. Other things have actually done really well, and as I mentioned, real estate is one of the stronger sectors. Retail REITs have actually been up very good, testing new highs. The software group is what's been really strong. Those are some big cap names within technology doing very well. A number of the top 10 groups, as you can see, are related to technology, so telecom equipment, semiconductors. We've talked a lot about the relative performance of semiconductors, how that can be a good confirmational signal about overall strength. And that certainly seems to be what we're seeing here today. Just to wrap up very quickly, I did want to point out in the intermarket analysis thing, 2 very interesting things actually close up as well. Number 1, bond prices. So if you look at the TLT, even though stocks rallied a ton and you're thinking, okay, maybe it's a risk-on move, we're stepping on the accelerator, something like bonds is going to sell off. Remember, it's not always the case. So the TLT actually finished up on the day, not dramatically higher, but about 0.25%, which is not bad. Traded off a little bit into the close, that's totally fair, but has had a nice bounce off of the 142 level. So overall, still setting up pretty constructively for bond prices, which is a little, maybe a little unusual, not what you would normally expect. The second one is gold. So gold is actually holding up really well also. So, up about 0.25% as well, similar to the TLT. So these sort of traditional safety trades that you think might have struggled a little bit, actually holding up pretty well. This is the challenge I discussed with a lot of our interviewees at the Orlando Money Show this weekend, which is, what do you do when everything's up? And it's all about differentiating. It's all about understanding how these things relate to one another. And I would encourage you to look deeper at the charts, or more deeply at the charts. That's where you're going to find some opportunities for differentiation. So our next segment here is I wanted to invite my friend Grayson Roze. Grayson's a fellow part of the management team here at StockCharts.com. We are working so hard to improve the platform. We've been listening to a lot of your suggestions, your requests over the years. And one of the common things that I know I've heard, and I'm sure Grayson has heard as well, fundamental data. Can we get earnings data? Can we get all this stuff? And I am so thrilled that we get to collectively say, no problem, we have it, right? So I want to welcome on Grayson Roze with me on the show. Grayson, thank you so much for joining us today. This is
Absolutely.
awesome.
No, I am so happy to be here, Dave. It's fun. It's exciting too because you're talking about going sort of deeper into the charts, beyond the charts, things like that. Actually, we just launched a new show called Beyond the Charts, and so now we're going to get to talk to you about how we're sort of supporting that here with this new feature, this symbol summary feature. So I'm really looking forward to it. You've been using it too. What have you thought so far?
So, well, it's really cool. I mean, we've been working on it for a while. As I've seen it get done, I think what's been really fantastic is during earnings season right now. That's where it's sort of top of mind.
It really shines, yeah.
When a company reports, that's where you're able to see it. You're able to see what's happened. You're able to get a sense of where it's been. Then you get to look right at the technical data that I think everyone is sort of interested in and see how they relate to one another.
Definitely, yeah. So like Dave mentioned, this is a tool that we've been working on for a long time. I'm sort of calling it a research tool. You know, I see our charts as sort of an analysis tool, and I think this is kind of a higher level sort of research tool. So for those of you that are wondering what we're talking about our new symbol summary page. We're going to sort of run through a couple things here. We're going to run through the what, we're going to run through the where, show you how to learn more, and then we're also going to talk about some plans for the future, which is an important part of this tool because it's really, I was saying this to some other people over the weekend, it's kind of a waterfall. This new edition is kind of a waterfall effect, where we're standing right now at sort of the top of the waterfall. We're introducing a couple things that are going to shoot us right off the waterfall, and over time we're going to be adding so much more to really support this new data. So this is sort of the start of something really big. A big new data launch into some new things here for us over a long period. So anyways, what we're going to talk about is the what. The what is the symbol summary page. Now you've probably seen some banners across the top of the site, like this gray banner that we have here, sort of mentioning the symbol summary. To get to it, I'm going to start on the dashboard here, and you can see from the nav bar, I'm going to go ahead and where it says Sharp Chart, I'm going to select that and choose symbol summary. So that's going to get you over there. Maybe you've already noticed that. I'm going to type in a ticker symbol here and pull up Microsoft. And what you're going to see now is this new tool that we've just introduced, which is called our symbol summary page. So what this really is kind of an expansion of a feature that we've had for a long time that you may already use on your Sharp Charts. I know I do. It's called the full quote view, which is an option on your Sharp Charts to sort of give you a higher level view of a stock that kind of introduces a few additional data points, some fundamentals, things like that. We've taken that concept and we've really blown it up and gone crazy with it here with our new symbol summary page. So this is sort of, in a lot of ways, the first stop when you're looking at a new stock, looking at a new ETF, whatever it may be. What you'll see here is sort of a top level, you know, how is the price moving? What is the market cap here of Microsoft? What's the volume doing? Those kinds of things up here in the headers. And then you'll see a bar across the top that includes some of the different sections of this page. You can always click that to sort of jump down. So if I click summary, I'm going to be scrolled down the page here. So I get a couple things. I'm going to get a chart. I'm going to get a summary panel that includes some performance figures, some range stuff. All-time high is kind of a fun one to have in there. Earnings information. We've got earnings dates now and when that actually is going to be. The last earnings date, the next earnings date, dividends, a bunch of good stuff there. We break that down into fundamentals and technicals next. We have those laid out side by side, which is nice and fun. And a ton of things in there that you really got to dig through. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go through everything line by line here on the show. But just kind of highlighting some of the features here. We've got a scooter panel, which I'm a big fan of. You're going to get this sort of colorful graphic that shows you the latest value, but you're also going to get 3 months of scooter history. That's the StockCharts technical rank, or sort of proprietary technical ranking system. Here, which we're going to talk about in just a sec, we have earnings and analyst ratings, which are both coming soon. Very soon, we're going to be bringing out full earnings history, analyst ratings, sort of diving into what the street is saying, things like that. You're going to get a profile on, for instance, a stock here. You've got address, a company description, a bunch of stuff. And then this is pretty fun. So if you're a member, what you're going to get here is a list of any predefined scans that this stock has triggered. So here you can see that Microsoft has triggered the new 52-week highs predefined scan that we run. So you can click over to that. You get a panel here with any alerts that you've set for the stock. So if you've created any sort of price alerts for Microsoft, you're going to see those right here. And if you've saved Microsoft into any chart lists in your account, you're also going to see that here. You can click on either the chart list name to jump right over to that, or you can click on the actual chart name to jump over to the save chart. So tons and tons of features in this page. As Dave would say, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot there, but there's also a lot coming, which is a great thing to mention. Now this, like I said, this is a waterfall effect. We know that there's a ton more that we want to add to this page. We've been getting great requests from a lot of people saying, it'd be great if you had X, Y, and Z. So we do have a lot of things coming, most notably quarterly reports and full earnings history that's going to allow you to sort of go back in time, see how earnings are growing, see if companies are beating estimates, things like that. And like I said, the analyst ratings as well. So that is sort of our symbol summary in a nutshell. That is the what. Now the where, I showed you one key piece, which is this nav bar. So on every single page on the site, let's say you're over on our articles page and you've got a stock, you want to pull it up, or maybe you're on our charts and tools page. If you are on any page across StockCharts, you can always go up to what we call the nav bar, change that drop-down menu where it says Sharp Chart to say symbol summary, and then again, you'll be able to just type in a ticker symbol and shoot right over to the symbol summary page. So that is going to be your go-to. But we've also rolled this out in quite a few places. On your dashboard, there's going to be a link here in the Member Tools panel. If you scroll down there, you're going to see under Summary Pages, you'll see symbol summary in there. Also, on some of these tables here, so this is on my dashboard, I've got one of my portfolios listed here, and I've got a little symbol summary link there in the table that's going to take you over right to the symbol summary for that. Now, if I pull up a chart list, here's the summary view for that chart list, and again, in that table, I've got a symbol summary link right there, so I can just click that and go right over to the symbol summary page. And we've kind of launched that across most of our table-oriented pages. So if you're looking at the sector summary, the scooter reports, or anything like that, you're going to find those symbol summary links in those tables. So look for that kind of, it's almost like a little file with a $sign in it. One other key place that we've added this, again, I'm going to pull up a chart of Apple here. Now this is a Sharp chart. I'm on the Sharp Charts workbench. If I scroll all the way down here below sort of all the workbench features, we've got this list of tools here at the bottom, which we've recently kind of made a little bit bigger and easier to use. And the first one is going to be symbol summary. So again, if you click that, you're just going to jump right over to the symbol summary page. So that's kind of the where. Again, you can access this page from a whole lot of different places around the site, and we're only going to add more. There's a lot more places that we want to roll this out as well. Now, one thing I talked about learning more, I want to draw your attention to 2 articles. So if you go to our articles page and over here under all StockCharts blogs, if you pull up the Chart Watchers blog, you can sort of scroll back through some of the articles that we've published here recently. But I wrote 2 articles specifically about the symbol summary page. These are from the Chart Watchers newsletter in the last 2 weeks. Here is one of them. I encourage you to definitely go check out those articles, specifically the one that was written 2 Saturdays ago. That's going to have a ton of information about all of the features that the new symbol summary page has, which is really great. And one of the keys that's in that article is a little bit of information about what's coming. Now, again, we've been getting tons and tons of great feedback, lots of positive reviews on the page, which we're absolutely thrilled to see. But we've also been getting a lot of requests for additional things and new features and things like that most of that stuff is coming. So bear with us. Go enjoy the symbol summary page. I think you'll be able to really work it into your workflow. I know I already have. I think Dave already has too. But just keep in mind that there's a lot more coming there. We're actually going to be able to chart fundamental data very soon. We're going to build a whole earnings center. Lots more coming with this data. So again, this is just kind of the start of the waterfall.
It's such a great recap, and I'm bringing up HASBA right now, and it has a little banner at the top that says HAS reports earnings tomorrow. And I've always, when I've thought about what it means to look at charts, but related to all these other things like fundamental data, earnings, and everything, it's all about integrating the two. So if you're looking at the charts, you need to have an awareness of when a company is reporting earnings, and Tom Bowley may be better than anyone has helped us understand that relationship. And I love the fact that it's we're going to be able to do more and more to surface. Here are the companies that you need to know. Hey, this is a stock that you're looking at. Heads up, this is a potential catalyst. So.
Yeah, I'm kind of laughing because when I told this to Tom, he said, "This is the best Christmas present I've ever had." I told him about a month ago that we were working on it. He said, "This is just, oh my gosh, he just lost it." So definitely check out what Tom is doing, but lots coming. So really excited.
Great breakdown of the function. Thanks so much, and Grayson, thanks for all the work that you did to sort of get this ready for everybody. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Folks, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back thinking shifting stocks, what's moving and why. We'll see you in a minute. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. Thanks as always for joining us here on the Final Bar. Every weekday, 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Pacific. Love to look at the charts with you and think about what it means to the long-term trends. Really excited about what Grayson shared with us in terms of fundamental data. And again, I will tell you, just thinking as a management team about where StockCharts is headed. There's so many cool functions and more data coming your way, and we'll look forward to sharing with you on this show and elsewhere on our platform. Our next segment is called Shifting Stocks. What we love to do is think about what is moving. So again, it's funny, when we were at the Money Show in Orlando, we talked with a lot of people about what was happening, and it starts as a macro conversation, but it very quickly gets into the names. It gets into what's moving and what sort of fluctuations we're seeing, and that sort of becomes the process that we follow. I think it's interesting to note when I look at the scooter rankings. Again, for me, when I think of stocks on the move, I look at the scooter reports. That's sort of where I logically want to go to because that's the way of capturing sort of what things are fluctuating. So on the left, we have the stocks that are at the top of the ranking. So again, it's a percentile ranking, and it's based on which stocks have the strongest overall score. It's a trend-following sort of mechanism. So quick observations here. You see things like Apple at the top of the list. Also a number of semiconductors, AMD, and a lot of just technology, right? NVIDIA, Microsoft, all sort of at the top. You also have some biotech, things like AbbVie, things like Biogen. You have home builders like Lennar, Pulte Home. So it's actually, you take 3 groups, and that's essentially the bulk of what we see at the top of the list of scooter rankings. Let's look at what's actually fluctuating today, though, right? So, or in the last, just in this trading session. Here on the stocks that are up, we have things like FCX. So this is a materials. This is a sort of copper, precious metals type of name. Up pretty significant. That's actually fairly unusual. These are the names that have been struggling pretty big. Also, something like LVS, Las Vegas Sands. This has a big exposure to news coming out of China. What sort of potential outlook there? So it's sort of interesting to see something like that on the top list. On a day that's a big up day, my logical move is to look at stocks that are down in a big way, right? Or stocks that are struggling when the rest of the market is actually doing pretty well. So I like to think about groups and names that are actually on the downside. So names that have actually lost a decent amount. You also have Amgen. So if you look at the little snapshot of Amgen, even though a number of biotech stocks are actually holding up very, very well for the overall scooter rankings, Amgen is actually struggling a little bit. Charles Schwab, SCHW also. And again, if you just look at the chart, not too bad. The problem is if you compare it to the rest of the world, right? It's all a relative game when you're looking at stocks. So even though the chart is holding up okay, it's holding support around 45.50. Look at the relative strength. It's to a new, arguably 3-month low today, 2.5, 3-month low. And so in general, you want to be looking at the stocks where the relative strength is doing pretty well. You want to be avoiding stocks like this where the relative strength sort of slowly and steadily going down. I would also point on Charles Schwab. I think it's interesting to remember, for me, my checklist starts with Dow theory. Are we in an uptrend or a downtrend? If you look at this time frame for the last year, look at the most recent highs and the most recent lows, right? We have a pattern of lower highs or lower peaks. We have a pattern of lower lows. So by definition, this is in a downtrend. And again, all else being equal, you want to tend to avoid stocks in downtrends and own stocks in uptrends. That's how over time you tend to do pretty well. Interesting to note that Twitter is here at the one of the weaker charts today. And again, after that big gap up that we saw, this was last Thursday, pullback on Friday, a follow through today. So, and again, not worrying too much about the news flow, just thinking about the charts themselves. This is almost a failed breakout, right? You have this gap up above the 200-day. We've now had 2 straight days of digesting that. Now we're below the top of the gap, closing back below the 200-day moving average. So really suggesting a little more weakness than might have been readily apparent a little bit ago. I did want to look at a couple other stocks just randomly on the list of movers. Lyft actually comes to mind as a chart that is potentially rotated really nicely from a period of distribution to a period of accumulation. I love looking at charts that have that transition, right? They're in a downtrend, then they stabilize, as we call a basing pattern. We have a resistance level around $50 a share. You then trade around below that a number of times, but never get too further off of that resistance. You test it again here, and then finally break through. Now we're we're closing above the 200-day moving average that just started to paint because we have enough data to produce it. So for the first time, it's above the 200-day, now above resistance, making a new 4 or 5 month high. Relative strength testing a new relative high if it can get a little bit further higher, a little bit above the highs from the peak here from the end of November. So potential lift is a name that's actually participating on the upside in a way that's a little a new pattern for the chart. So those are some of the names that have been shifting around today. And again, we just touch on it when we start looking at individual names. I'd encourage you to look at the charts of things like FIS and Chipotle and see how some of these things have moved recently. And as always, put it within the proper context of the long-term trend. We need to wrap up the show by going right into the 3 in 3. So at the end of every show, I like to break down 3 charts in 3 minutes. And the idea is, if these are not on your radar yet, I hope they are from this point on. These should be pretty key parts of your analysis, I would suggest. So there's sort of a breadth theme to the charts I was putting together today. The first one is looking at a chart we've looked at before. This is the S&P 500, the percent of S&P names above their 200-day moving average, the percent above their 50-day moving average. What's interesting here is you see a bit of a bearish divergence, which is similar to what we see with RSI on the daily chart of the S&P. So you have higher peaks the last month or so in the S&P at the top. If you look at the percent of stocks above the 200-day, sort of lower peaks, right, trending downwards. Same with the percent of stocks above the 50-day. So think what that means, right? Stocks rallied into the first week or two of the year, pulled back to the 50-day moving average, and it went from 85% of the S&P above their 50-day down to 45%. So all of a sudden, over half of the S&P stocks were below their 50-day. Then, as the market has recovered and pushed on to new highs, it's been driven by a narrow group of stocks, primarily technology, especially big cap technology, which can certainly drive the index higher. But look how only 63% of the S&P are above their 50-day. So again, that's 2 out of 3. That's not bad, but it's not making new highs. It's not like everything's sort of pushing higher. A lot of stocks are not quite participating in the last couple days, and that's the point of chart number 1. Chart number 2 is looking at breadth by cap tiers. When I spoke on Saturday at the Money Show in Orlando, this is one of the charts we spent a little bit of time on, just talking about the relationship from mega caps to large caps to mid caps to small caps. And this is one of the ways that I like to track that performance. I'm looking at the cumulative advanced decline line on the S&P, the New York Stock Exchange, the mid cap index, and the small cap index. I've color coded them just subjectively based on what I'm seeing. So S&P breadth overall has held up pretty well. And again, the largest company is doing pretty well. If you look at the mid-cap index, though, you can see we've put in a lower peak and we've broken down to a new swing low. We've gone below the low from the first week in January. Small caps are the most negative, right? It's actually gone very clearly to a new low and now established a bit of a lower peak. So overall, the smallest, more speculative companies are breaking down. That's where the breadth is the most negative. This was one of the more striking charts that came out of my weekend review. I like to go through a bunch of charts and just think about overall trends and everything. Look at the S&P 500. This is just the closing prices, and this is the relative, it's not the relative, it's the absolute percent returns from the market bottom at the in December 2018, that Christmas Eve low, if you remember, from just over a year ago. Since then, the S&P 500 is up 45.5%. Look at the higher peaks here from mid-January to where we're at right now. Look at the lower peaks in the mid-cap index, in the small-cap index, and in the micro-cap index. So now we have this divergence where the largest companies pushing higher, the mid-cap, small-cap, micro-cap companies not confirming those higher highs. And again, that doesn't mean we are absolutely going to have a top. All it means is these are the characteristics that other tops have sort of have. And for me, that's something I want to pay attention to. And ladies and gentlemen, that is our show here for Monday afternoon. For Redmond, Washington, I want to thank you all so much for joining us on the Final Bar. Please keep your questions and your feedback coming. We'll try to do a mailbag segment tomorrow. Just email us, thefinalbar@stockcharts.com. Get to us on Twitter @finalbar@CTV, or just put a quick question into the Q&A before you move on with your day today. And we'll make sure we get to your questions very, very soon. Go to our YouTube channel for Stock Charts. Make sure you subscribe and add notifications. Then you'll get notified for our YouTube live Q&A coming up this Thursday. For StockCharts.com in Redmond, Washington, I'm Dave Keller. Have a wonderful night.